shopping for rugs, it's just not very much fun. Well, Revival believes that rugs are works of art that have the power to transform a space, and the secret sauce lies in blending quality materials with traditional and modern weaving techniques to make the best rugs around. The founders didn't want to spend thousands on a new rug. They bring their approach to rugs to you. There are beautiful vintage rugs. There are washable rugs. This is Revival's most popular rug collection. They are combining true washability with the look and feel of a real rug, so you don't have to sacrifice style for convenience. I just bought a gorgeous 8x10 rug. I can't wait to put it into my dining room. The shopping experience was so easy compared to traditional rug shopping. You just go onto the website. You can get an overall impression of the rugs. You can see them. You can compare them. It was so easy to find the one that worked for me. Visit revivalrugs.com/fluster and use code FLUSTER20 for 20% off your first order. Once again, that's revivalrugs.com/fluster and use code FLUSTER20. One more time, revivalrugs.com/FLUSTER with code FLUSTER20 to save 20%. The goal is not to never be snippy with your partner. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is that when you are snippy or when you make this agreement with your partner, that in the moment when things tend to go off course, the other person points it out to you, that you can accept that, which means that a 30-second tense interaction doesn't turn into a 2-day fight. Like as soon as you stake out your territory, as soon as it becomes, I've got to win this, I've got to make my point, that's when things become fights. That's when things become protracted arguments.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a Flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, Robin.
So I have something I want to talk to you about today because your brother, who is my husband, and I have been talking about this one thing in our marriage and a pattern that we are wanting to work on, and we have a plan.
All right.
So we work together now, as you know, but our listeners might not know that. So we work together with a couple of our different businesses.
Yeah. And I work with my husband too.
That's right.
So we know this well.
We do know this well. And I should say this. So your brother, who is my husband, is the producer of this podcast. So we talk about it a lot as well. So he's a good Flusterclux student. And we are sort of pulling together all these things that we've learned.
Okay, I am all ears here.
So we want to, with practice, eliminate snippiness in our marriage. And obviously, because we work together too, between children, work, etc., there's a lot of opportunity to be snippy with each other. I would say that we're actually not super snippy with each other compared to maybe other relationships.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about when one of us is being snippy. If anyone has been listening for a while, they'll know that there's a part of me when we're traveling called Airport Robin. And Airport Robin takes no prisoners when it comes to our schedule if we need to get to an airport and catch a damn airplane.
Right. It's not up for discussion.
It's not up for discussion. Now that we work together, there's also a time when I'm not in my rigid, we got to get to the airport now. I can be really overwhelmed with a lot of deadlines and a lot on my plate. And I can also be overwhelmed, Robin. So this is a pattern I didn't know I had until the anxiety audit. Truly, it was like, I thought I sort of knew all my patterns. I'm really still unpacking overwhelm as a very new student. So overwhelm is another time when I can get snippy, okay? And your brother can get snippy too. So this isn't all about me, I promise. So this is about both of us.
There's sound husband.
Yes, he's like obsessed with improving our sound quality. And I think if this episode came out as well as it should, he has definitely helped elevate the sound quality of the episode too.
Absolutely. Just as you have gotten your family to the airport on time. Right? No, I mean, seriously, like that's oftentimes why we get into our patterns or why we embrace our patterns is because they work to get the job done in the moment.
Right. They can produce results.
They can produce results. Yeah.
But they can also produce a lot of disharmonious moments in our relationships. Irritability, isolation. I'm going through all the anxiety audit. And if you don't know what that means, that's Lynn's most recent book. And she talks about and unpacks these most common anxiety patterns and what they look like. So when I have snipped at my husband in a place of overwhelm, I pause and I think about it. And the way it sort of came to me is I said, I'm not actually trying to speak to you disrespectfully. This isn't how I actually feel about you. How do we learn to communicate with each other when we're not in a pattern? We had a work discussion a couple of weeks ago, and I had several deadlines that were really hard, and I was very overwhelmed. He's proposing a variety of things that we need to do, and because I'm in a state of overwhelm, I'm not in a problem-solving mode. I'm just like, okay, I don't want to talk about this. No, I don't want to do this.
That's a bad idea. Move on. Next one. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, not so much that. It's like, no, I can't do that right now. No, I can't do that right now. But it's my overwhelm speaking. I don't actually have any snippy, angry feelings at him. But I realized, well, why am I speaking in an angry, snippy way when I'm grateful someone's trying to help me?
And I am working on the very same thing in my marriage, actually, because my husband and I work together. So there are certain patterns, and I know exactly when the snippiness comes up with me. It tends to be when I've got a lot to do, like you, I'm on deadline. My life, because of what I do, is very time focused during the day because I schedule clients on the hour. I've got meetings on the hour. So if my husband wants to talk to me about something, and I know that I have this free time, I will be snippy. And then also his pattern is he can be rigid. He can be very almost obsessive about getting things done correctly. So detail oriented.
We have a not so dissimilar dynamic because you and I are very similar work personalities, and things don't have to be perfectly neat for us because we just keep pivoting and keep on going. Mm-hmm. And we each have partners in our work and romantically who are all about making sure the details go as they should.
Right. And he is the person who does my contracts. He's the MBA, I'm the MSW, so I use a different part of my brain. And he is so particular about the contracts that it takes him a long time to get them out. And I'm like, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And that causes snippiness between the two of us. So we've started actually doing the same thing where we will say to each other, he will say to me or I will say to him, you need to just say that same thing in a different tone, please.
Okay, well, when we come back, I'm going to tell you the plan that we have.
Okay. As a parent, I bet your brain is already at full capacity. You've got school projects, to-do lists, errands to run. Let Skylight Calendar handle it for you. It syncs your entire family schedule onto a sleek digital display so you can focus on the more important things, like remembering whether or not your coffee is in the microwave or upstairs on the bathroom sink. Skylight Calendar was designed to connect the digital and non-digital worlds while bringing families together. The digital display showcases your family's schedule with clarity, color, and brilliance in either a 10 or 15-inch HD touchscreen. It's an all-in-one smart calendar. It syncs with Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, Outlook, and more. With the free Skylight Companion app, you can add or update events, lists, and more on the go. Your happiness is Skylight's happiness. So if in 120 days you are not 100% thrilled with your purchase, you can return it for a full refund. No questions asked. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/fluster. Go to skylightcal.com/fluster for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/fluster. So a lot of families are really working to reduce screen time. But you still want something that engages your children's brains. There's a podcast called Who Smarted. It's a short, fun daily podcast that teaches science, history, and weird facts in a way that's silly and smart. It was created by people who worked on shows like Nat Geo's Brain Games, so it's evidence-based, but totally kid-friendly and fun for grown-ups. It gives kids' eyes and nervous systems a break. It sparks conversation, so instead of you always being the explainer, you get to listen and discuss things with them. Parents love it. You're just replacing background noise with something meaningful. It's called Who Smarted, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, spring is in the air. I love spring. I love my kitty. I don't love litter box stink. Nobody does. That's why we use Pretty Litter. It obliterates odors so we can enjoy all the wonderful scents of spring without the smell of a litter box. Pretty Litter's non-clumping formula traps odor and moisture. It's lightweight, low dust, 1 6-pound bag works for up to a month. And Pretty Litter gives me peace of mind. It changes color to indicate early signs of potential illness in my kitty, like urinary tract infections, kidney issues, and more. And since Pretty Litter ships free right to my door, I never run out. You don't want to run out of kitty litter. I don't have huge kitty litter bags taking up space. I don't have to go out to my car and get those huge tubs of cat litter and lug them into the house. I have used many types of kitty litter. I have had cats my whole life. Pretty Litter is better. It doesn't clump. It's cleaner. It's not dusty. And you can tell the difference between a litter that deals with odor and a litter that doesn't. Pretty Litter helps keep my house smelling fresh and clean. Try and you'll love it. Go to prettylitter.com/flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. That's prettylitter.com/flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. prettylitter.com/flusterclux. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details. Okay, we're back.
I love what you just said. And this is like fusing all of the skills that you've talked about, because it's about ownership, owning the moment that you're in, owning what you just put out there. You got to own it. And you can't be defensive when your partner comes back at you with this.
And that's the hardest thing.
And so what we have committed to is that when someone says something snippy to the other, the first person who received it is going to practice not taking it personally, because this is a Michael Yapko thing. Learn to take what you need to personally and what you shouldn't take personally.
Correct.
So the first step is to not take it personally, and from a place of calmness, look at the other person and say, let's reset. And then the person who just heard, let's reset, has to take ownership of what they just put out there and to recalibrate and not be defensive and not say, yeah, but. And if the person's like, yeah, but, then you come back and you say again, let's reset.
Yeah.
So that we can then come to a place where we're not speaking from our patterns. So in another instance, I feel like I mentioned this on another episode, is that I was focusing on a particular headline in the news. And I said, okay, I'm starting to feel a little catastrophic about this and what its outcome could imply. And my husband just looked at me and goes, well, good luck with that, and walked out of the room. But honestly, I was like, cool, we're practicing the ability to snap out of the patterns and to create distance from these patterns so that we can move on.
My husband schedules speaking engagements for me. So I was on the road and he got an email of somebody asking to do something. And we had the discussion that my spring is full. And so he called me and he said, hey, we got an email from such and such, and I'm looking at your calendar, and that week of April, whatever, looks kind of empty. Could we put something in there? I took it so personally, like he wasn't listening to me and he was trying to give me more work and blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, it's hard to hear. I think we're having a conversation. I think I'm asking you a question that you can give me an answer to. But because I was traveling, because there's a lot going on, because I'm juggling stuff, I was in that overwhelmed place. And I really had to hear that from him. I really wanted to come back and say, yeah, but I told you my spring is full. And he's like, you're allowed to say to me no or whatever. He said, we're having a conversation here. So that moment where you acknowledge and recognize that the snippiness, because he wasn't being snippy with me, I was being snippy with him. It takes an enormous amount of awareness and acceptance and emotional management to interrupt that pattern in the moment.
Hugely. I don't think that we're going to be able to adapt this without it having a couple of backfires and defensiveness, etc. But I think that we've had enough instances where we've seen, okay, yeah, the pattern was really like taking over and you weren't present in the conversation. We've had enough of those now where we can look back on those tense moments. And now we sort of have a better understanding of what's going on from an upper level view. I like what he said about we're having a conversation. That makes sense. But honestly, I think if someone said that to me, that wouldn't be enough to get me out of my overwhelm.
We are having a damn conversation, fella. Right. So you need something more direct, like let's do a reset. And that's what when we say like, okay, so we need to change our tone.
Right.
And the realistic part of it is not that you're going to do it perfectly all the time. I mean, the thing about this that is so important is the willingness to reset, because that means that a 30-second interaction doesn't turn into a 2-day fight.
Yes.
We just want to recognize that the goal is not to never be snippy with your partner. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is that when you are snippy or when you make this agreement with your partner, that in the moment when things tend to go off course, the other person points it out to you, that you can accept that, which means that a 30-second tense interaction doesn't turn into a 2-day fight. Like as soon as you stake out your territory, as soon as it becomes, I've got to win this, I've got to make my point, that's when things become fights. That's when things become protracted arguments. I will tell you, when my husband says to me, hey, take it down, or my husband says to me, like, we're having a conversation, my first impulse with every cell of my being is to say, oh yeah, really? I mean, it really is hard to interrupt that pattern.
Yes, it is. You and I are sisters-in-law, and we have worked together a lot. We're not snippy with each other. I have the ability to not be snippy with you, but obviously we're super close and we are integrated into each other's lives. What is it about our dynamic? So if you're like, can you help me with my website? And I was like totally overwhelmed. I would actually have the ability to say to you, I will definitely help you with that next week when I get through something. But why is it that if our partners or even our kids, for example, ask us to do something, we don't have that skill?
Well, we have the skill. It's because there are different rules of engagement. People bring different parts of themselves to different interactions, and they give themselves permission to use different parts in different places. The story I always tell is about the guy that was on the flight with me that was acting like a complete idiot. I think he was probably drunk, but he was raging on the plane. He wanted to sit in first class, and we all just sort of sat there. Like the flight attendants came back and said to us, like, we're really sorry. We got it under control, sort of. And he was just being a jerk. You can all imagine. And then when he stepped onto the jetway to get off the plane, there were 4 uniformed New Hampshire state troopers waiting for him. And suddenly, in that moment, he developed some social skills that he didn't have 30 seconds ago when he was on the plane. We oftentimes have that ability to transform how we engage, what we say, the tone we use, the language we use. But as relationships get more comfortable, more intimate, more whatever words you want to give them, we give ourselves permission to act or respond in a different way. And one of the things that I say to families all the time is that, say a parent says to me, God, my kid is so terrible at home. I said, well, what's going on at school? And they go, he's great at school, or he'd never speak to his coaches that way. Or I say, that's good, because that means the skill exists. We just have to make it important in that context. It's really a matter of familiarity and what you give yourself permission to do. I swear a lot.
So do I.
And I know that when I'm talking to a group of 6th graders, probably shouldn't swear.
Right.
So it's how we give ourselves permission. So sometimes with little kids, we're developing a skill, but as adults, we generally have the skill to be able to manage how we speak to each other. We can take a moment. My husband uses the term mulling. So he says when something happens between the two of us or when there's an interaction, I'm really good at thinking about it later, harder in the moment. And he says, so when I mull something over and then I come back, I will tell you that one of the most sort of, I don't know what the word to use, but I don't want to use the word gratifying, like as if I've won something. But if we have a disagreement about something, if he comes back an hour later or 2 days later and says, I've been thinking about this, and then talks about his pattern or helps figure, that is an enormously connecting experience for the two of us, I think. I try and do that too. I don't use the word mulling, but that's really owning your own stuff. And you've heard me say so many times, the hardest people for me to work with are the ones that don't own their own stuff. So you don't have to do it all in the moment, although that's the goal, to do it within 30 seconds, not 2 days. But we do have that skill. I think that's a really important point that you bring up.
As I say this, and I think you and I can now check in with how my no snippiness challenge goes over the next 60 or 90 days. I'll talk about it again over the summer. Some listeners may say like, okay, this is kind of interesting and I'll want to work on that too. Other listeners are going to say, there's no way I can do this because my partner doesn't listen to this podcast, hasn't read, doesn't have a lot of information about his or her own stuff to participate with this. Because truthfully, two people have to really be committed in order to take this on. But I do want to say that you can do something with your kids that's pretty easy. When your kids are old enough, it's okay to say to them, not obviously in the moment, but it's definitely okay to say to them, if you feel like I'm being grouchy, tell me, because I don't really want to be grouchy. So if you think I'm being grouchy, tell me. And kids are like really good at telling the truth.
Right. Well, and that's what I talk about with the anxiety, that if you're a worried parent, if you're an anxious parent, you should pull out your anxiety part, give it a name, call it Sylvia, and then tell your kids. If Sylvia is getting in the way of us having fun, or if you feel like Sylvia is in charge of me or in charge of this family, point that out to me. And then same rules apply, that you have to hear that and you have to own that, because it's really, really easy as a parent too. If your kids say like, Mom, you're being grouchy, so easy for you to come back and say like, well, the reason I'm being grouchy is if you had listened to me the first time, I wouldn't. It's so easy to come back and defend that, to justify that. And I think that's what we're talking about, is that we don't want to get in a habit, in a pattern in our relationships with our partners, with our kids, of defending or justifying that kind of interaction. That's what happens. That's what keeps things going. That's the yeah, but. That's the stake out the territory.
You know, this is what emotional management is all about, because you're not always going to be emotionally managed, because we've said that. We're both going to say snippy things. And I don't think the goal is to ever not be snippy. The goal is, if someone tells us we're being snippy, to own it and to try and move through it. But if we work on this emotional management with our kids, with our partners, we're really giving the space for so much more connection than that sort of toxic energy of resentment or anger or whatever. It's how you create closeness. I want really close connected relationships with my partner and with my kids. I'm a child of not so great marital connections. I didn't have that. So I'm really committed to trying to create that for myself, as well as let my kids see that.
I think you bring up a good point, is that what you said is that you didn't have good modeling growing up. And so you're learning all of this. You have to figure this out in your marriage. You have to work on this. What a gift it is we give to our kids, that we model this for them so that it becomes normalized. Because in a lot of families and a lot of interactions and a lot of things that kids witness, what's normalized is the snippiness, the resentfulness, the lack of being able to own your own stuff. When you are modeling for your kids how to own your own patterns, how to come back, how to apologize, how to work on snippiness or whatever, you are giving them a head start in their own relationships.
That's why I'm so motivated to fold them in with this, because if we give our kids these skills with our nuclear family, it just gives me optimism that it means that our kids choose partners who are ready to show up at that level as well. I mean, later on. I don't mean like high school crushes or anything like that. The more we give our kids these tools, I'm hoping for them, the more they're capable of finding partners wanting to work on this and wanting to focus on deep connection too.
We're in our 50s. My kids are older than your kids, but this is a time where our kids are really stepping into relationships. So they are figuring these things out. They are going out on their own for the first time and having to interact with people outside of our immediate purview. So you do the work ahead of time. The other expression, do as I say, not as I do, that's also total bullshit. Modeling is really the most powerful thing. When people talk to me about, well, how does anxiety get passed down in families? The research shows, particularly between parents and teenagers, it's really about modeling. It's really about what you do in your own life and how you interact with them and how you interact with the people around you. What you say to them is far less powerful than what you are showing them on a day-to-day basis, because that's what we absorb as social beings. We absorb all of that action and all of those relationships and all those interactions and all those emotions. We absorb that. This is when people say to me, well, you're blaming parents for their kids being anxious. No, I'm not blaming. I'm just telling you we're social creatures. And to me, that's a very optimistic message that you have a huge impact on how your children learn how to do relationships. You have an impact. I think that's good news.
We've said this before in an episode that I like because it is ultimately optimistic. Anxiety is a family problem, but it's a family solution too.
That's right. It's generational. It just is. Human beings, this is what we do. It's so silly to think that you're going to be in a family and all the things that your family does and the way you handle things or don't handle things, that you're somehow living in isolation from that. Not true.
Let's take a break. And when we come back, there's a listener question we're going to take.
Shopping for rugs, it's just not very much fun. Well, Revival believes that rugs are works of art that have the power to transform a space, and the secret sauce lies in blending quality materials with traditional and modern weaving techniques to make the best rugs around. The founders didn't want to spend thousands on a new rug. They bring their approach to rugs to you. There are beautiful vintage rugs. There are washable rugs. This is Revival's most popular rug collection. They are combining true washability with the look and feel of a real rug, so you don't have to sacrifice style for convenience. I just bought a gorgeous 8x10 rug. I can't wait to put it into my dining room. The shopping experience was so easy compared to traditional rug shopping. You just go onto the website. You can get an overall impression of the rugs. You can see them. You can compare them. It was so easy to find the one that worked for me. Visit revivalrugs.com/fluster and use code FLUSTER20 for 20% off your first order. Once again, that's revivalrugs.com/fluster and use code FLUSTER20. One more time, revivalrugs.com/FLUSTER with code FLUSTER20 to save 20%. So when you buy seafood, what are you looking for? You're looking for nutrition, sustainability, taste, and you also want one that tastes delicious. Well, Wild Alaskan Company is the best way to get wild-caught, perfectly portioned, nutrient-dense seafood delivered directly to your door. It is really delicious. I actually had some salmon last night. It was delicious. It is 100% wild caught, never farmed. This means there's no antibiotics, GMOs, or additives, just clean, real fish that support healthy oceans and fishing communities. It is delicious, nutrient rich, full of flavor. It's frozen off the boat to lock in the taste, the texture, and the nutrients like omega-3s. And it's sustainably sourced, wild caught from Alaska. Every order supports sustainable harvesting practices, and your membership delivers flexible shipments, expert tips, and truly feel-good seafood. If you're not completely satisfied with your first box, Wild Alaskan Company will give you a full refund, no questions asked, no risk, just high quality seafood. Not all fish are the same. Get seafood you can trust. Go to wildalaskan.com/fluster for $35 off your first box of premium wild caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/fluster for $35 off your first order. Thanks to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode. It's finally spring. The sun is shining. You know how it is. You go through your wardrobe and you think, okay, so I need to freshen things up. Well, Quince has got you covered. I don't know if you wear t-shirts like I do, but they have a cotton modal scoop T-neck 3-pack for $36. 3 high-quality t-shirts. I already have several of their t-shirts. I love them. Everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. They work directly with top artisans, cutting out the middlemen. Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, premium fabrics and finishes. If you are looking to add some amazing essentials to your summer wardrobe, treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/fluster for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/fluster to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/fluster. Okay, so now back to the show.
Okay, so Lynn, we got a listener question after we did an episode this past fall called The 3 Patterns That Are Most Toxic in Adult Relationships. So here's a listener, and this is what she said. That episode was really interesting and brought up questions for me. What if your partner can own their patterns but responds with, "That's just how I am," so they can own it, but they don't work on it? I'm very much the type of person who tries to learn and grow, and I've grown and changed over the last 15 years of our relationship. But when my husband and I talk about something in the response is, "I don't know anything about that," or "That's just how I am," I don't know how to respond, and I find it frustrating.
Of course you do. So I think what this question brings up is that it's part 1 and part 2. So say somebody owns their pattern, sort of. They acknowledge that it exists, but then they're not really interested in changing it. What that means is that they're not really recognizing the impact of their pattern on other people. Say you have a partner that just leaves their stuff on the floor. Not like every once in a while, but maybe they leave stuff on the stairs, or they leave their shoes in the middle of the hallway. So at night you're walking to the bathroom and you trip over their shoes, or they leave their computer somewhere and you trip over the cord, and you say to them, "Hey, I need you to pay attention to your pattern of leaving your stuff where people walk because I keep tripping on it or I keep stepping on it and I don't want to break it," etc. And they acknowledge the pattern. They're like, "Yeah, I know I tend to leave my stuff in the middle of the floor, but that's just the way I am." So part 1 is they're acknowledging the pattern. Part 2 is a willingness to recognize the impact of your pattern on somebody else. And that's where we get stuck, is where people will say, "Well, yeah, I know I'm anxious, but that's just the way I am." And that means that what you are saying is, I know I'm anxious, and I am going to expect everybody else to accommodate this pattern. It's kind of like you trying to get out of jail free, right? You're really saying, okay, I get that I do this, but I'm not going to change because I'm not going to recognize the impact it has on other people.
Do you also think, though, that maybe in this specific relationship, the husband's using this language because he doesn't really understand the concept of change about his patterns? He doesn't believe that that's possible.
So you're right. So that's the next part of it, is that sometimes people don't know how to change, or they don't know that it's possible, or oftentimes there is family language that says this is just how we are. So I see this a lot with OCD. I see it a lot with addiction issues. I see it a lot with anger issues. I come from a long line of fill in the blank, right? I come from a long line of tempers. I come from a long line of blank. One of the things that I often say is when people say to me, well, I'm just anxious, or this is just how I am. And I've been coming up against recently people saying, well, you're telling me that I can't be who I am. You're telling me I have to hide this part of myself. And I will say, no, you have to manage that part of yourself, because even though you think that your anxiety is just a you problem, it actually becomes a family problem. It becomes a social problem. And the analogy that I've been using is, what if you were rageful? What if you were somebody who punched holes in the wall? What if you were somebody who threw things across the room? What if you were somebody who was physically abusive? You would not accept that in another person. If I said to you, well, your roommate is rageful and this is just who he is and he just smashes things, you would not accept that. The hard part of this is, one, is that you're right. There has to be a message that goes back to the how. The why we can probably figure out, but how do you change it? And what you might be able to say to this person is, your pattern, your way of looking at things, I get that that comes naturally to you, but because we live in a family, I want you to recognize how it impacts us. And I would like you to get, at the very least, curious about the possibility of changing this. And that's called positive expectancy, which I talk about a lot, the belief that things can change. When somebody shuts it down, it's either that they're not recognizing the impact, it's something that's super familiar to them, so they think, well, this is just the way I am. And to your point, Robin, they don't know how to change. They don't have the language. Nobody's given them the instruction. Nobody's told them what to do, which is why when families come to see me, parents say all the time, just tell us what to do, because they know something needs to change. They just don't know how. So I would have a conversation with your husband, listener, not in the moment, not when he's just done his thing, because that's when people tend to feel the most defensive, as we've been talking about. And that's when he's going to be least able to be curious, because being curious doesn't happen when you are feeling defensive. When you're under attack, or when all of those parts of you have been activated, that's not when we're curious. A cat is curious when it doesn't feel threatened. When it feels threatened, that's when it's fighting. So being able to have a conversation with him outside of this, where you, as generously as possible and as honestly as possible, talk about how this impacts you, his unwillingness to look at his own patterns impacts the family, how you want him to be curious. And then you can even say to him, there are certainly patterns that I need to work on too. So let's look at the patterns that we have together, maybe play this episode for him, and see if you can generate at least a curiosity in the ability to change, because that's where people shut down. Either they justify it because that's familiar, that's what we've always done, my family has temper, my family has this, my family has that, or they just don't know what the next steps are, and it feels not only like they can't speak the language, but that they don't have any reason to believe that change is possible. This is why, when people are recovering from addiction, you hang around with people that are in recovery, because they are the walking embodiment of change is possible. That's why that program works so well for people. You're hanging around with somebody who's done the change that you in the moment might feel is impossible. How could I possibly do this? Well, here's your sponsor, Joe, who did it. That's the sort of model that we want to think about. Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
In honor of Military Appreciation Month, Verizon thought of a lot of different ways we could show our appreciation, like rolling out the red carpet, giving you your own personal marching band, or throwing a bumping shindig. At Verizon, we're doing all that in the form of special military offers. That's why, this month only, we're giving military and veteran families a $200 Verizon gift card and a phone on us, with a select trade-in and a new line on select unlimited plans. Think of it as our way of flying a squadron of jets overhead while launching fireworks. Now that's what we call a celebration, because we're proud to serve you. Visit your local Verizon store to learn more. $200 Verizon gift card requires smartphone purchase $799.99 or more with new line on eligible plan. Gift card sent within 8 weeks after receipt of claim. Phone offer requires $799.99 purchase with new smartphone line on Unlimited Ultimate or Postpaid Unlimited Plus. Minimum plan $80 a month with autopay plus taxes and fees for 36 months. Less $800 trade-in or promo credit applied over 36 months. 0% APR. Trade-in must be from Apple, Google, or Samsung. Trade-in and additional terms apply.